H, who is kindly with us today to share his experience, strength, and hope for about 50 minutes. Thank you so much, Bill. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Bill H, who is kindly with us today to share his experience, strength, and hope for about 50 minutes. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I finally got it to unmute. My name is Bill. I'm an alcoholic, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be with you all at one of the other addiction meetings. Thank you, Terry, for inviting me to come into this particular electronic campfire. I've been thinking of these Zoom meetings now. We've been doing these for 3.5 years. And it always reminds me of an electronic campfire. Picture this for a minute. We're all sitting here around the fire, okay? We can see each other. We can see each other around the fire. We're sharing experience, strength, and hope. We're kind of warm by the fire. We're warm by what other people are sharing. But every now and then you hear a noise back behind you in the forest, in the dark. And you look at each other and you say, "Did you hear that?" And she says across the campfire, "Yeah, I heard that." "What was that?" "I don't know." But we're all here safe and warm together around the campfire. You may wonder why I'm starting that way. I wonder why I'm starting that way too. Those of you that have been with me before know that sometimes we venture into the tall grass for reasons that are still unknown. But if you're new, I want you to feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable right now, I hope you can get comfortable in the next 15 or 20 minutes. Because the purpose of this meeting and the purpose of every other meeting is to share. I know we say that a lot, share your experience, strength, and hope. And I kind of think we trip right by that word share. But think about share. We're not alone. We are sharing a recovery experience right now. It'll be different for each one of us. But we are sharing a common spiritual recovery experience by virtue of the fact we're in a meeting of people who desire to be in recovery. We may not always like to be in recovery. You may have days like I have where I'm a little annoyed. Do I have to go to my home group this week? I listened to part of a fifth step earlier today on a man's resentment inventory, and while I was sitting there listening to him, I'm trying to be patient, I'm trying to stay focused, I'm trying to listen. And there's a part of me that says, is it ever going to end? If you've listened to any fifth steps, you've had that. Is it ever going to end? And we're not even into the fear or the sexual conduct inventory. In fact, we didn't even finish the resentment inventory today. So I sit here with you today, safe and sound around the campfire. And even if I hear a noise in the background in the woods, I say, is it ever going to end? I want to talk about 3 things: physical addiction, mental obsession, and spiritual recovery. My drug of choice happened to be alcohol. I took my first drink in the fall of 1960. I was 18 years old. I was a freshman at the university. I had a full scholarship. I was on top of the world. I had a part-time job, had my own car, had my own girlfriend. I was on top of the world. I had no reason to drink except everybody around me was. I thought, well, I'll take a drink and fit in. I had no idea that my physical addiction kicked in that first time I took that first beer. Now, for the next 2 years, I was a bit of a social drinker. I drank at fraternity parties. I only drank, kind of when I had to, when other people were drinking. But by the third year of my drinking, the physical addiction had become so strong. And I didn't see this for over 20 years later because I didn't get sober till March 18, 1981. So I drank for 21 years, and I'm reading a big book one day, probably heard somebody else reading it. Page 152, 153 in that chapter called A Vision for You in the AA Big Book, it says the alcoholic will reach a point where he cannot imagine life with alcohol or without it. I suspect that's true if cocaine was my addiction. I suspect that's true if sex was my addiction. I suspect that's true if anything was my addiction. You reach a point where you realize I can't do this anymore. It's killing me. Whatever short-term benefit I'm getting out of it is way offset by the long-term price it's costing me. The short-term gain is way outweighed by the long-term pain. And so I know I need to quit. And yet I cannot imagine life without it. The physical addiction got me to start using and keep using, but the mental obsession was what turned out to make stopping, not starting again, not picking up again, not taking the first one again. The mental obsession is what makes it so difficult. I'm not going to do a drunkalogue today, just enough to say that by the third year, I had to drink. 4 years after that, I was in prison because of choices I'd made and consequences of those choices. Society thought I was better off locked up. Needless to say, that was on my resentment inventory. Got out of prison, diagnosed as an alcoholic in 1967, and I drank for 14 more years thinking I could control it. Some of you may have decided you had a problem and decided you could control it. That's one of the features of the addiction illness, and it's certainly one of the features of the mental obsession. Even after I know I've got the problem, I tell myself I can handle it. Now, I haven't had a drink in over 42 years, and the most dangerous thing I can hear myself say today is, I can handle this without help. I can handle that without help. It's the single most dangerous thing I can hear myself say today. I don't need help. Particularly, I don't need God's help. I got to AA. I missed the part about don't take the first drink. My life was in shambles. I was in my second divorce. I was about to lose a very good job. I was physically going to hell in a handbasket. And I finally went to AA, and missed the part about don't take the first drink. I went to AA and continued to use for 3 months. I'm sure that never happens to anybody in CA, but I'm just saying what happened to me. And I finally took that last drink in March of 81 and got a sponsor and started working these 12 steps. And I slowly, you know how our book says sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly? I'm a sometimes slowly guy. Because I think, see, I'm also German. I think that adds to the sometimes slowly. You know what people say, you can always tell a German. You just can't tell him much. People say that. People say that in my presence, Luis. That's kind of heartbreaking. They're very insensitive, you know. In any event, I started working these 12 steps, and I found out. Now, this is tricky, so I'm going to walk through this slowly. You know how you treat the physical addiction? Don't start. If I don't take the first drink today, I don't have to worry about the physical addiction kicking in. I mean, that sounds so obvious, and I make fun of, you know, it's not really complicated at all. It's very simple. But the physical addiction, because I still have the craving built into me. I know that. I know a lot of alcoholics that went back out and drank. I know other users. I know people with other addictions that go back out and pick up, and they pick right up where they left off. So the physical craving is still there that the use, the first one would trigger. So the way I treat the physical addiction is don't start again. Stop starting. But the mental obsession, even after I know I have it, and even after I know I need to stop doing something, whether it's over drinking or overeating Oreos or seeking love in all the wrong places or buying too many cars or too many boats or too big a house that I can't afford. I used to go to meetings in Florida, used to live in Florida. There was a guy come up from Naples to go to our group. His name was Larry. Needless to say, we called him Naples Larry. You know how we are. Larry had a great line that describes this obsessive thinking, whether it has to do with drugs or alcohol or anything else. He says, and Larry's one of these guys, made $1 million, lost $1 million, made another $1 million, lost another $1 million. He made it and lost it over and over and over. He said one day, he said, I was spending money I didn't have to buy things I didn't need, to impress people I didn't even like. That's a pretty good, all the way around the basis description of the mental obsession. How do we treat the mental obsession? I know I treat the mental obsession with the information in this book. I didn't used to like this book. This book had too many limitations for me. It had some suggestions that I needed help that I didn't like. It had some suggestions that I needed, watch for it, spiritual help. What the hell's that? Power greater than myself. Who wants to consider that? I am my power. I am my power. And you tell me, well, yeah, but there's a higher power. There's a power greater than you. Call it God, call it what you will. There's a power greater than you. And your mental obsession will continue to tell you, even after you acknowledge there's a power greater than yourself, Bill, yeah, but you still don't need help with this, or you still don't need help with that. So I got to that second step after they convinced me how unmanageable my life was. And it wasn't just the alcohol. My life was that I made poor decisions based on self-will long before I started drinking. Remember teenage years? Duh. Self-will run riot was going on in my life before I ever took a drink. So they introduced me to this notion. There's a power greater than me that could restore me to sanity. My first sane choice today was, God, help me not take a drink today. That's the first prayer I say when I get up in the morning, before I get out of bed. God, help me not take a drink today. Second prayer is, God, help me be of service to others. My third prayer, if I can't be of service to others, at least help me not become part of their problem. Those are the first three prayers I say every day, because I call it a preemptive 10th step. Ask for God's help before I think I need it. Just ask for it before I think I need it. It's like carrying an umbrella. Guy says, well, it's sunny out. Yeah, but it might rain. You carry the umbrella as a preventative on a rainy day or on a sunny day in case it rains. God, help me not take a drink today is the first sane choice I make. And asking God for help is a sane choice that I began to learn way back in step 2. Made a decision in step 3, very simple decision. Relieve me of the bondage of self, because I now see this mental obsession. Even if I don't pick up, even if I don't trigger the physical addiction, this mental obsession will continue to bring me down and tell me it's not doing it. Relieve me of the bondage of self in step 3 leads to this odd thing called self-examination. Isn't that peculiar? It's called a personal inventory. And they said, well, we're going to take inventory. I said, hell, I know how to take inventory. I've been taking other people's inventory for years. I'm gifted with taking other people's inventory, aren't you? It's okay to smile, people. This isn't that sensitive. Come on, lighten up a little bit. I mean, you're here on a Saturday afternoon by choice. I don't think anyone's here with a gun to their head. You decided to come to this meeting. It's not that expensive, so I guess you get what you pay for, but nevertheless, we're going to do self-examination. We're going to learn how to do that in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why? So I can feel worse about myself, digging up all this crap from the past with resentment, fears, and sexual conduct, which is really a nice name for inconsideration. So I feel ashamed, deepen my regret, no. I need to find out what's blocking me from receiving the help I need from that higher power to relieve me of the bondage of self. The purpose of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is to find out what in me is blocking me from the help I need from the God of my understanding, and take steps to start to let go of that stuff. So in 4, I do those 3 inventories: resentments, fears, Sexual conduct, where have I been harmful to others? Where have I done harm? Where have I done wrong? Where have I, no matter what they did, it doesn't say they didn't do wrong things to me, but where have I been? Selfish, dishonest, resentful, and afraid. Where have I been inconsiderate? And I talked through that with my sponsor in that fifth step and get more clarity about the underlying motives. It's one thing to remember the harmful things I did and the wrongs I did to others, but in step 5, I try to get below that, say, what were the motives? What drove that? And it turns out, as my young friend this morning found out, there's only a handful of motives, the objectionable things, step 6 called it. 5 or 6 or 7 that I say to God, I need help, because even after I know I need to stop doing this, just like I knew I needed to stop drinking, I couldn't stop drinking on my own. I can't stop doing the stuff I now see as harmful to me on my own. So I ask God in step 6, grant me the willingness to let go, which means to me, learn how to live without this, learn how to live without sarcasm, learn how to live without dishonesty, learn how to live without cheating and stealing and so forth. Learn how to live without wanting too much attention. And in step 7, I ask God for the power. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. And God says, write an 8-step list. Make a list of everybody I harmed and what I did that was wrong, that harmed them, and become willing to make amends to them all. Think about that for a minute. We're not at step 9 yet. We're just at step 8. Pretend we're never going to do step 9. In step 8, when I make that list of people and write down what I did that was wrong and what was harmful to them and become willing, name by name, not just a blanket prayer over the entire list, but name by name. God, help me be willing to make amends to her. God, help me be willing to take responsibility. Step 8 is a responsibility step. Pretend I'm talking to me in the mirror. I'm in step 8. I'm not in step 9 yet. I'm talking to me in the mirror saying, God, help me take responsibility for the wrong thing I did to her and the harm it caused. God, help me take responsibility for the wrong thing I did to him and the harm it caused. Name by name. Because on page 76 of the Big Book of AA, it says we have this list and we became willing. And if we didn't have the willingness, we asked God for it until it came. I get most of the relief for my regret about my past and my remorse and my guilt and my shame about my past. I get most of the relief in step 8 by praying over each name and taking responsibility. I didn't know that for a long time. But that's why the book is written, so I can read it and have other people help me read it and understand it. Application is the key to my spiritual recovery. Application, not knowledge. I can read this book, I can quote this book, I can do workshops on this book twice a week, as I do, but that doesn't contribute hardly one thing to my spiritual recovery if I'm not willing to try to apply it in my life, in my relationships, in my situations today. And then we go do the 9th step the best we can, because in step 9, we take accountability. If I took responsibility with me and God and another person in step 8, step 9, I take this show on the road and begin to be accountable to other people, which teaches me how to start to have a healthy relationship. Wrap up real quick. Yes, this turns out to be a step talk. Lo and behold. I treat my physical addiction by not picking up the first one. I treat my mental obsession by replacing myself in the center of my life with the God of my understanding in the center of my life. I learned to do that in the first 9 steps, including letting go of my past through 8 and 9, and then one day at a time. Step 10. I hear people say all the time, just do the next right thing. Have you heard people say that in the last 10 years? Oh, just do the next right thing. Like there's nothing to it. First, I have to ask God, help me not do the next wrong thing. On my own, I will do the next selfish thing. On my own, I will get a resentment. On my own, I will be afraid. So step 10, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, it doesn't say if. It doesn't say you don't have to worry about this after 5 years clean and sober. It's true for me today. That's why I do that preemptive 10 step in the morning. God, help me not take a drink today. Help me be of service. If I can, at least help me not be part of the problem. And then I can go to step 11 and with God's help, try to do the next right thing. Seek to improve my conscious contact. Seek to grow this relationship with God that has been given to me. I hope you realize sitting around this electronic campfire today, we've been given a gift. We showed up, the campfire was already here. We look around and say, I'll be darned. There's a nice warm campfire. Look at some people sitting around the campfire. I'm going to sit down on a log. I forgot to bring a chair. I'm sitting on a log. Feels pretty good because I'm in the fellowship. I'm in a spiritual recovery fellowship. And I become aware of the fact I've been given this gift. Step 12 calls it a spiritual awakening. It's a gift. I did my part. I worked on getting the stuff out of the way so God could help me, come in and help me more. But we've been given a spiritual awakening. I didn't come here looking for a spiritual awakening. I came here to get through my divorce, keep my job. I didn't even come here to quit using. And I've been given a spiritual awakening. What do we do with it? What do we do with this gift? Well, we try to carry the message to others who are joining us around the campfire. And we try to practice these principles in all our affairs. The most peculiar gift in history. We've been given a gift, and we are told to give it away. Odd. And then we find out, the more we try to give it away, the gift grows. I don't know of any other gift in history that you're given a gift and told to give it away, and the more you give it away, the more it grows. Thank God I don't have to understand that to experience it. And I no longer try to explain it. I just say thank you, and I thank Terry, and I thank the group, and I thank each one of you for bringing your gift to the campfire today so we can all share in the warmth of our collective and our individual spiritual awakening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Bill. Bill, you got another 28 minutes to go.
Oh,
You want
really?
to wrap it? Yeah, you want to wrap it up or you want to keep going?
Misunderstood. I thought you said we had 20 minutes.
No, 50, 50, my friend.
Oh,
It's all yours.
Well, let me say this. I've got about 10 more minutes I'd like to share. And yeah, I'm only going to take about 10 more minutes because I really do want to hear what other people have to say. But I mean, this is a CA meeting, right? I mentioned to my wife yesterday, she's away at a woman to woman this weekend, and she had a couple gals come in from out of town, and they had lunch here yesterday. And now watch this. 3 Al-Anon ladies asked me to join them for dessert. Yeah, and we had homemade brownies. Yeah, Kathy. Tina made brownies. We had some ice cream, of course. I mean, it's illegal. I don't know about where you're part of the world, but in Missouri, it's illegal to have brownies without vanilla ice cream. So I was invited to join the ladies yesterday afternoon. And so evidently, I no longer represent a threat to the Al-Anons, which is encouraging. And we're sitting there, the four of us are chatting and reminiscing, and these gals have known each other. They've been doing this woman-to-woman conference together for many, many, many years, so they know each other. And of course, stuff goes on at woman-to-woman that I don't know about, right? And they start referencing different things that happen, and I'm just sitting down, watch this. I really don't know what they're talking about, right? They're talking about stuff they've done the last 20 years at woman-to-woman. I wasn't there. I don't have any experience. There's a part of me that realizes they're not talking about me. Yeah, it's funny now, Luis. It was a little annoying yesterday, and I realized they're not going to be talking about me because I've never been to the one. I drove down there with some papers one time that they'd forgotten. Joe McHugh, Joe with the Big Book Study, Joe and Charlie. Joe's wife was my wife's grand sponsor, and she was at the Woman to Woman many years ago down in Arkansas when they did it in person. And she'd forgotten some papers she needed for her workshop, so she called Joe, and Joe's car was in the shop. So I drove Joe down to the side. We thought, well, Joe McHugh's with us. We'll get right in. Nope. Guy stopped us at the gate, said women only. How much, and I kind of felt like that yesterday, but they were letting me sit there. But the first thing I realized, it's not about me. The second thing I realized, it doesn't have to be about me. And the third, and this all happened in the space of about 15 seconds. The third thing I realized was, I'm okay that it's not about me. Now, that may not make sense to some of you, but if you still wake up as self-centered as I do, I don't go to bed praying to God, please, 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 let me wake up self-centered in the morning. I don't have to ask for that. It just comes. I wake up human. Being self-centered is human. We're all a little self-centered. Our friend Clancy used to say, alcoholics are like everybody else, only more so. I suspect that's true of a CA member as well. We're like everybody else, only more so. Sometimes we just get in our own. So anyway, I sat there, not getting in my own way and not getting in their way. And then at one point, Tina turned to me and said, because I had told her I'm speaking at your meeting today. Tina met Terry back in January. She knows Terry. Terry's been on the workshops with us. Tina likes Terry. Don't let it go to your head, brother. She likes you a lot, actually. Makes me a little nervous. Tina turns to me and said, tell these ladies what you're doing tomorrow. And I said, well, my friend Terry asked me to speak at a meeting. And Tina said, yeah, but what kind of meeting? Well, I said, it's a CA meeting. And the one gal from Ohio or Indiana says, I didn't know you were in CA. I said, I'm not. She said, well, how are you going to speak at a CA meeting? I said, very carefully first. But I said, once we get past the first half of step one, once we get past whatever our addiction was, powerless over alcohol, powerless over cocaine, powerless over addictive substances, powerless over other people's drinking, powerless over baking a birthday cake for the daughter the next day and having a taste to be sure it's okay, and by 10:30 at night the entire cake is gone and we're baking another cake at midnight. That's what the people in OA go through. That's a hard program. You can't give up eating. I mean, how do you abstain from eating? That's a tough program if any of you have tried OA. Anyway, once we get past, no matter what 12-step community we're in, once we get past step one, I explained it to the ladies yesterday like this. Picture this great big arena. There's lots of doors coming into the arena. It's a great big circular arena. See, we're going from the campfire now to the circular arena. Don't ask me why. That's just where we are today. Let's hope God has a hand in this. That's all we can pray for, man. So there's this great big arena, and there's lots of doors coming in, like the big arenas where they have the auto shows or the rodeo. And there's one door called AA. And there's another door called CA, and there's a door called Al-Anon, and there's a door called SA. There's a long one, Love and Sex Addicts Anonymous. I'm glad I don't belong to that one. It's way too damn many letters. And there's a door called OA, and on and on and on. There's about, 50 or 60, maybe more 12-step programs now. Everybody comes in through their door. I am an alcoholic. I'm an original. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't have a 12-step program. A guy made a mistake of saying that speaking at an Al-Anon meeting one time, and one of these Al-Anons, not the ones that were with us yesterday, but one of that circle stood up and said, listen, you twit, If it hadn't have been for people like you, we wouldn't need a 12-step program. So don't do that at an Al-Anon meeting. They'll get you. They'll come back. They come armed, you know. In any event, we get in the arena, and I'm, you know, here, I'm an AA, and I'm going to look over. Here's a CA gal. And then the CA gal, and I look across, and there's an SA guy. And then we look across, the Al-Anons are all grouped. And you look around the arena, this is taking place during that dash in step one. We admitted we were powerless over fill in the blank. Our lives were unmanageable. We're standing in the arena after we've just walked through our door in the dash. And we look around. Everybody else's life is unmanageable too. And we're just coming to admit it. We're just coming to. We're coming to admit I'm not just powerless over this, that, or the other. My whole damn life is unmanageable because my decision maker is broken. I don't know how to make a healthy choice. I don't know how to make a sane choice. I try like hell to make a healthy choice, and I still blow it up. All of a sudden, and by the way, I didn't see this for years. Why do the 12 steps work on so many other addictions besides alcohol? Because the addiction isn't the problem. The substance, Big Book says liquor was but a symptom. Boy, that's a heartbreaker. That means there's something more to do here than just not use. That means there's something more to do here than just not pick up. That means there's something more to do here than just stop trying to control. And we all look around and realize the 12 steps work for all these different programs because once we get past the reason we came in here and start focusing on the reason we need to stay here, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, the spiritual awakening is what treats the mental obsession. The spiritual awakening helps us see the delusions we've been living in, believing something isn't true that is, like, I'm not unmanageable. That's a delusion. Believing something that is true that, believing something isn't true that is a delusion. We all have delusions and illusions. That's what make up our mental obsessions. So when we get to step 2, we're on common ground. All of a sudden, we're working the same 12 steps for the same reason. We're trying to treat self-will run riot. We're past the addiction, as long as we're not picking up. As long as we're here not using, we're past the addiction. Now we're dealing with self. Having to live, some people say live life on life's term. I say live life on God's terms. Without the emotional anesthesia of the drug. I can no longer use the alcohol, the drug, the cake, the obsessive control of others to deal with emotions I don't know how to deal with. I can no longer use it. That option's been taken away because I'm now in the arena of recovery. And so when I took a little less time yesterday than I did today to explain this to the ladies, but I said, once I get past the first half of step 1, we're on common ground. And hopefully the folks in the meeting will understand that. And the reason I stress that, and I even stress this in AA talks, we live in a world, at least more in my lifetime, I won't say more than history because we go through these periods in history from time to time, but we live in a world, and I was born in 1942, so I've seen a little bit. We live in a world where people are making a killing on differences. We're not looking for common ground. We're looking for differences so we can point the finger, take their inventory, play the blame and shame game, and not take responsibility for fixing it. How many people are getting paid a lot of money just to tear stuff down today? They want to tear stuff down as an end in itself. And we live in that world. You can say, well, that's an outside issue. Well, it's an outside issue till we leave this meeting. Then it's the world we're living in. Part of our gift, practice these principles in all our affairs. Part of our gift is to be a better example to all the people who don't know how to live, finding common ground amongst the differences. You may have that situation in your own home. You may have, I know it's hard to believe, you may have differences with your spouse. You may, now watch this, you may see things differently than your children. And you know what's even worse? They see things differently than I do. I cannot understand how that happened. I have children who are hard-headed. I have children, they're in their 50s, but they're so strong-willed. How did that happen, Terry? I say it to my wife, and she just says, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That's the compassion I get around here. We have an opportunity. I close with this again. We've been given this gift. Look at the common ground we found here this afternoon. I'll come in thinking we got a special door. Well, I came in through the AA door. Well, he came in through the CA door. He came in through the Al-Anon door. We look around, we're in the same arena, the arena of unmanageability. Self-will run riot with the hope of a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity and help us find this so-called spiritual awakening and keep it growing. Keep it growing. By the way, the word failure in the big book isn't to take a drink. Failure in the big book is a man who failed to enlarge his spiritual life. That's true of all of us. Failure is when we stop trying to enlarge our spiritual life. And one way we enlarge our spiritual life is to keep trying to share this gift. Take responsibility for it. It's such a wonderful opportunity. Be a good example in the checkout line. You ever go to those checkout lines in the store where it says 12 items or less? You have those where you live? And I don't know about you, I can't help counting. And that lady 2 up ahead has got 17 items on the belt. And my self-righteousness kicks in. I want to knock that little old lady between us out of the way, go and tell her, I think of it as sharing, of course. I'm going to share with the lady. She needs to either take 5 items back or get the hell out of line. And then I want to take on the cashier for letting her get away with it. Instead, I stand there quietly and shake because I'm restraining tongue is not easy. So I told this story to my friend Steve one day. He said, well, I'm trying to practice my principles in all my affairs. I'm trying not to tell her she's got too many items. He said, well, that's progress. But he said, you know what would be better? I said, what? He said, stop counting. Geez, these people ask a lot. When we leave this meeting today, because I know you're under good behavior here, but when we leave this meeting, be the example. Be the example of looking for common ground. Be the example of finding where we can get along and help one another, and be the example that recognizes our differences can be our strengths. You think God made all these people different just so they could stay pissed at each other all the time? I don't think so. Our differences are our strengths, but we have to recognize them. We have to learn to disagree agreeably. We're going to disagree, but we have to learn to disagree agreeably. Quit taking everything so personally and quit turning blaming and shaming into an Olympic sport. I guess I feel pretty strongly about that, don't I? We have an opportunity, we have a gift, and we have a responsibility. We don't pick up Don't have to worry about the physical addiction. Mental obsession, I wake up with the possibility every day, so I seek my spiritual awakening early and often. I take responsibility. I'm not perfect. I am definitely sometimes slowly, not sometimes quickly. But I take my responsibility, my part in my relationship with God today to do what I can to try to enlarge my spiritual awakening, try to enlarge my spiritual life. And so for the second time today, I say thank you for letting me share. And I am out. I'm done. It's over.